I was a group navigator, so I was responsible for training all the navigators and everything of that type. And we had a meeting with the scientist about January of '45, I guess it was. And the scientist said, we think the airplane will be okay if you're 11 miles away from the bomb when it explodes. And I said, now, wait a minute. You're telling us this thing's going to blow up the airplane? He says, we don't know. He says, hell, some people are saying you got to be 50 miles away, in which case you guys are dead. He says, so some people are saying you can't get far enough away and everything. But the consensus is you have to be at least 11 miles away when the bomb explodes. So all of our training was get 11 miles away. In ordinary missions over Europe, we just dropped the bomb here, and the airplane would be here, and it would come down like this and hit the target out here. You just keep right on going over. If we'd have done this with the atomic mission, I wouldn't be here, because they would have blown up the airplane, blown up me and everything else. So you had to go in, drop the bomb out here, and it went ahead of you. You're at high altitude, make a right-hand turn or a left-hand turn, one of the two, of 150 degrees, push the throttles all forward, and just run like hell. So we decided we needed stripped-down airplanes. We took the regular B-29, we took all the guns out of it, all the turrets out of it except the tail guns, all the weight we could get out of it and throw away. We put fuel injection engines on it. We really had good airplanes when we were finished with it. Now keep in mind, we dropped two different kind of bombs over there. At Hiroshima, we dropped a uranium-235 bomb. This was the simplest design and everything else. All the uranium-235 bomb was is a piece of finely milled piece of uranium back here in the back of a cannon, up in front with another piece of milled uranium. It fired the cannon. They came together. They got the critical mass. You got the atomic explosion, just like that. And you had a charge in the cannon that arming the bomb was there in that particular case was putting the charge in the cannon to send the one piece of uranium into the other. The second bomb we dropped was dropped on here at Nagasaki, and it was like all other bombs we ever dropped, and it was a plutonium bomb. It had a ring of explosives around the center, around the nose of the bomb, that had to fire in very precise, timed interval. In doing so, it compressed. It was a shaped charge, and it compressed the uranium into a critical mass. And they got their explosion that way. It had never, our bomb at Hiroshima, the uranium bomb, had never before been tested. We tested the fusing mechanism 2 days before we dropped it. Now, the fusing mechanism in this bomb was, you drop the bomb out of the plane, you're about 30,000 feet. Immediately, a switch closes to arm the bomb, start arming the bomb. It doesn't activate, however, until it drops down to a certain altitude, about roughly 15,000 feet. At that point, another switch closes, and there's a barometric switch. It will not explode, supposedly, until that switch closes also. And then finally it keeps on dropping, and then at about 1,800 feet, a radar proximity fuse activates and explodes the bomb. So they all three had to work in sequence at the proper times and everything else, or it doesn't work. Deke Parsons, a Navy captain, Deke Parsons, who had more to do with making our bomb than any other individual, really good man and everything. He actually made the bomb. He armed the bomb in flight. By that means, he had black powder, and he went back into the bomb bay and took off the percussion cap, loaded back black powder into the bomb and everything, that when it exploded, it sent the uranium forward. So we had the briefing that morning, about roughly late morning, the day before the mission, and then we're told to go get some sleep. Now, how they expected to tell you you're going out and drop the first atomic bomb, and it might blow up the airplane, and go get some sleep is absolutely beyond me. I didn't sleep. Farabee didn't sleep. Tibbets didn't sleep. I know that because we were also three in the same poker game and everything else. I don't even know who won. Then they came, of course, and got us early evening, and we went over and had a final breakfast, final briefing, then down to the airplane. We got down to the airplane. It was all lit up by keg lights. I thought, boy, nothing like telling the Japanese you're coming and something special and everything of that type. All lit up by keg lights. And there are a lot of people running around interviewing, taking pictures and everything of that type. Dick Nelson. Well, I looked at it and I said, looks like a Hollywood premiere to me. And Dick Nelson, who comes from Southern California, says, looks like a supermarket opening to me. But I want to emphasize this was not for the media. There was not a media person on the island of Tinian. They were all down on Guam, 60 miles away. All the interviewing, all the picture taking and everything else was being done by the Manhattan Project. I always thought General Groves was doing it to test, in case he had to testify at congressional hearings about why the bomb didn't work and everything of that type. But it did work, so we didn't have to do it. So this went on, and I have books in here about it and everything of that type for maybe an hour. And then finally, as kept approaching takeoff time, we hollered at people to get out of the way, get the cameras out of the way. We had to take off. So we got in the airplane to take off. And our biggest problem then was that we were very heavily overloaded for a B-29. We were about 150,000 pounds max gross takeoff weight. Normal max gross takeoff weight was about 135,000. So we had to get it off the ground. That's the first thing. It's a lot of weight to get off the ground. Tibbets held the airplane on the runway as long as he could. And I remember looking out the window and I saw water going by, and I says, well, we're either flying or I'm swimming awful fast. So we were up airborne, to take off and this sort of thing. We stayed at low altitude from the time we took off until the time we got up to Iwo Jima, because that's when Captain Parsons, Navy Captain Parsons, and Morris Jepson, his assistant, were going back into bomb bay and arming the bomb. And we got to Iwo Jima. They had finished that job, and we made one circle of the island. Chuck Sweeney was on one wing, and George Marquardt was on the other wing, so we just take off to Japan. And climbing very slowly along the way. Mission was very easy. It was almost like we have, let's put it this way, we had no enemy opposition whatsoever. The Japanese at that time had no defense against high-flying airplanes, and we were at 30,000 feet. They couldn't even get to us and everything of that type. The weather was perfect. I could see this coastline of Shikoku from probably 100 miles away at that altitude. I went in, crossed the island of Shikoku to a small city east of Hiroshima, which was our initial point. We made a left-hand turn onto a heading of about 270. Tom Farabee picked up the target. We talked about it. Tibbets, Farabee, Tibbets and I, and Dick Parsons, all three got gathered on the nose of the plane, and we talked about the target. Was that the target? We all agreed it was, and everything. And we didn't want to repeat our time over in France when we bombed the wrong target. And so went in and just dropped the target, dropped the bomb. And as soon as we dropped it, we were on. Keep in mind, the plane is on automatic pilot when it drops a bomb, and the bomb site, Norden bomb site, at that time is flying the airplane. You have an indice set on the bomb site, set there by the bombardier based on dropping characteristics of the bomb. And then you have another moving indice. When they cross, the bomb automatically leaves the airplane. The minute it did, Tibbets switched off the automatic pilot, started turning the airplane into the right-hand turn he was going into. 150 degrees, steep bank, 60 degrees, push the throttles forward, just ran away from it. Just get away from the bomb. We were still just coming out of the turn when the bomb exploded. It took 43 seconds from the time the bomb left our airplane until it exploded, detonated. In that 43 seconds, we had completed a turn. We're leveling out, going away from it. The bomb exploded in. Shortly thereafter, all we had to do was wait for the blast. And so we kept going away from it. I forget how long later. I could calculate it. It was roughly 15 miles at the speed of sound. The shock wave caught up with us. The plane jumped all over, snapped all over, and everything else. And that was the first shock wave. Very shortly after that, we got the second shock wave, which was a reflection of that first one from the ground. The shock wave was measured at 3 Gs. A G is 3 times your normal body weight. And to a fighter pilot, 3 Gs doesn't seem like a whole lot. But in the B-29, at 30,000 feet, it seems like a hell of a jolt. So we kept going away from it until we were sure we weren't going to get any more shock waves. Then we turned around and take a look at what had happened. The bomb had detonated. The entire city of Hiroshima was covered with black smoke and dust from the bomb, by the way, exploded 1,800 feet above the ground. So the shock wave came down and out like this, spreading out over the city. The city was covered with smoke and dust, so that you can make no visual observation. Here, the mushroom cloud that you've seen pictures of and everything was sitting on top of it, and it was already up to above our altitude, above 30,000 feet. Obviously, a tremendous amount of energy had been released. So we flew a little bit. We couldn't see anything, so we flew a little bit in the southeast quadrant of Hiroshima. Did not circle the target. Flew a little bit in the southeast quadrant. Was obviously we weren't going to see anything, so we turned around and went home. That was that vision.
What was going on in your mind at that point?
Lots of things. Number one, we were thankful the bomb had worked, because as I told you before, it had never been tested. Secondly, this war was over. We didn't see how the Japanese could stand up to such power and such force and everything else very long after we saw what had happened. So we were, in fact, monitoring the radio on the way back, hoping the Japanese would announce surrender before we ever got back to Tinian. But they didn't. We landed at Tinian. There are more generals and admirals there than ever in any place in my life. So we had a debriefing, and that was it. We reported to all the admirals and generals who were there at a debriefing about what we had seen, what we had done, and everything of that type. But they didn't know any more than we did, because they couldn't get recon airplanes over Hiroshima until several days later. We were just glad the damn thing had worked. Remember, our purpose was at that time to defeat Japan. We thought the war was going to go on for another 3 or 4 years. Japan had troops over in China. They had troops in Indochina. The amount of they had troops. By that time, we had taken back the Philippines, but they had troops all over and everything of that type, and they had very large land armies. Their Air Force was shot, their Navy was shot, but they had troops all over Japan, all over, heavy land armies. And it was their basis was to get all those land-based troops over onto the beaches to defend in case of invasion. They wanted to fight the last battle on the beaches in order to get better terms of surrender.